Good morning, all. My name is Abby Hughes, Project Manager at Nonprofit Association of the Midlands. We're excited to have you join us for our second panel in our COVID-19 series in partnership with BGA. You are here today for fundraising in the time of COVID. We're excited to learn a lot about some local events that had to be moved virtually. So just a few quick Zoom reminders before we get started. You are on mute and your cameras are turned off, so you don't need to worry about either of those. We will have an open Q&A session, so please feel free to submit any questions you have in the Q&A box. If you kind of scroll over your screen, a toolbar should pop up and you'll see a Q&A button. Click that, you'll be able to submit your question. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared after. Otherwise, that is pretty much all we have. So again, thank you for joining us. And I will turn it over to Shane to get us started.
Thank you, Abby. My name is Shane Peckney. I'm a grant writer and development consultant with Vic Gutman and Associates. We're really proud to be partnering with the Nonprofit Association of the Midlands on this series of insights. Our last presentation, of course, was on public health, June 5th, and our next one is on legal and ethical issues in the workplace, July 1st, and there's still space for that, so if you haven't registered, check that out. But today we're talking about virtual events. As a grant writer, I normally stick to my core competency of grant writing, and I try to stay as far away from event planning as possible, but today I've really found myself in the thick of it. So we have three experts on hand to answer our questions. I'm going to ask them a bunch of probably naive questions about how they plan their events, and they're going to give us a bunch of smart answers, and hopefully those will give you some ideas to figure out your next event, which may very well need to be virtual. So let me just briefly introduce each of our three panelists, and then I'm going to let them give us a little introduction about what their organization does and how their event went, and then we'll get into some Q&A. First of all, Lindy Hoyer is the Executive Director of the Omaha Children's Museum. She's been there for 18 years, and she's spent pretty much her whole career in educating children through the Children's Museum experience, both in Omaha and Lincoln. Denise Bartels is the Vice President of Fund Development at Catholic Charities. She's been there for a year and a half, but she also has a lot of past experience in fundraising and event planning for Omaha Performing Arts and Scott Catholic High School, as well as organizing an event for Laureates and Gardens previously. And then Sally Stalnaker, she's the Executive Director of the Arthritis Foundation of Nebraska. She's been there for almost 6 years, and she has a lot of prior experience in public relations, including a stint with Albert's Communications Group here in Omaha. These three ladies lead very different organizations. They have very different events. They are dealing with very different levels of resources, and we hope this diversity of experiences can shed some light on how you might handle your next virtual event. So just to kick us off and to kind of give you an idea of how these events got started, we'll start with Lindy. And Lindy, could you tell us about the For the Kids benefit at the Omaha Children's Museum?
You bet. Thank you, Shane, for that introduction and for inviting me to be a part of this panel. So Omaha Children's Museum was established in 1976. So we've been around about 44 years, and the For the Kids benefit has been around for about 42 of those years. It's an established event that hasn't always been held at the museum. In the early years, it was held all throughout the community in some really interesting spots like airplane hangars and UNO Fieldhouse and things like that. But the recent history, we have held our For the Kids benefit at the Omaha Children's Museum. It typically has from 400 to 500 participants each year, sometimes pushing that 500 closer to 550, 600 in banner years. And it typically will generate a gross income of around $300,000 to $320,000, with expenditures in the $75,000 to $85,000 range. So this year we were faced, as many organizations were, with the decision to close the museum. And in addition to that, we were concerned about whether or not we'd be able to, on the 1st of May, be able to hold our For the Kids benefit. We held off about a month after closing before we made the final call, but we made the call to cancel the in-person event. And the event is usually a silent auction. It falls in line with the Kentucky Derby. Participants come and can bet on the horses. We watch the Derby. There's some other challenge games that they can do, a silent auction, and then dinner and oral auction. That is the typical event as we've been doing it recently. This year, of course, the in-person piece of it did not happen. And I'll go into more detail on what we did do from the virtual and online perspective of it as we get into the questions. But that's the background on Omaha Children's Museum's For the Kids benefit.
Lindy, before we move on, can I just ask you, what was one of your biggest fears when you suddenly had to take this event virtual?
Well, I mean, it sounds kind of like the obvious, but our biggest fear was we wouldn't raise any additional money. We had raised some money, the underwriting and that going up to it, but that we just really wouldn't hit any revenue goals and see the net positive profit that we typically saw.
Okay. All right. Next up, Denise, could you tell us about Irish Fest?
Yes, thank you all for attending, and thank you, NAM and BGA, for allowing us to be a panelist on this. As Shane mentioned, I'm at Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities has been kind of a staple in this community for the last 95 years. We have 3 different locations. We have a suite of things. We have a Juan Diego Center in South Omaha, where it's a very large anchor in that community with the pantry, immigration services, microbusiness. We have a facility in North Omaha at St. Martin de Port on 22nd Emmett. We have a robust senior program there with also a small pantry, but a very large and growing homebound delivery. And then we also have the only domestic violence shelter in Douglas County, and then also behavioral health services. But Irish Fest has been around for the last 29 years. It is, as everyone knows, is right before St. Patrick's Day typically. And in the heyday of Irish Fest, there was big bands and, you know, Earth, Wind and Fire, and when it was really big. And then as the whole entire dinner auction takes its own evolution of change and, you know, paying big bucks to that, was it really worth it? So this year, we raised over $400,000 for it. Our event was on March 14th scheduled, and as we all know, the world changed on March 15th. So the week prior to that, particularly 48 hours before our event, which is the typical dinner auction with a silent live race the paddle, dancing afterwards, we flipped the switch to virtual, and we took it to the next level. We held the event of what our program would have been on a Facebook live stream that evening at 7 p.m. We did lots of marketing around it. I don't want to say we were lucky, but because the world was changing then, we did capture some media attention around it, like all of a sudden what's happening to all of these events and how is it going to happen that it's virtual. And we felt like our program was very important because we were honoring some of our clients, and really we wanted to stick to what our mission was. And Shane will get into more questions and answers to that. But it was a scary time. But you know what we thought, to your question to Lindy, is what was your biggest fear, is what do we have to lose?
Gotcha.
And we were also fortunate that because of the timing, most of our corporate sponsors and our table sponsors were already in. But as we get into questions, things have changed, and sponsors and corporate sponsors are really more educated on this. And really the focus is, any virtual event you do, is keep it to your mission and not about the event, but the mission. And that's the most important thing to remember.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Denise. Sally, could you tell us a little bit about the Walk to Cure Arthritis?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for being here today. First of all, the Arthritis Foundation is boldly pursuing a cure for America's #1 cause of disability while championing fight against arthritis with life-changing resources, science, advocacy, and community connections. Nationwide, there are 54 million people, including 300,000 children that suffer here from some form of arthritis. Our office locally covers Nebraska and Pottawatomie County in Iowa, and locally there are 300,000 adults and 2,000 children who have arthritis. Funds are raised through our Walk to Cure Arthritis, Woman of the Year Gala, and Jingle Bell Run, Omaha Gives and Chad. Goes towards our Camp Spirit at Camp Pataki, JA Fund Days, research, local resources with our medical partners, and local connect groups. Currently, we have an online community and a helpline, and of course, these are jumped up a lot more during the virus. Our walk was originally scheduled for May 30th at Warner Park, and on March 15th, it was decided that we would be working from home and that our walks across the country would be going virtually. Of course, our biggest concern was that we did have half of our sponsors and some of our teams had started fundraising, but we tried to keep in mind through all this that we were raising it for a cure, raising the funds. A virtual walk committee was formed, and that comprised of honorees, team captains, some of our sponsors, and our leadership board members. And with that, a lot of our walk was done through our Facebook locally and nationally, and we created a schedule based around the theme of the 54 million people, and that is raise $54, tell 54 people, and move 54 steps. So everything that we did from March 15th through now was based around that theme. Actually, with the fear of not, normally we have 400 people at this event. We had 170 people sign up. We had good sponsorship. They all had an opportunity to post on Facebook. We recognized the doctors that were part of our leadership board that were affiliated with that institution, like Ortho, Nebraska, Nebraska Medicine. We have doctors from both of those in our honoree organizations. So they were highlighted. They were offered the opportunity to speak. We had videos, people walking. We had opportunities to show ways to help with gardening and preparing meals for people with arthritis. We did have a watch party midstream that was national with Matt Eisman, a TV personality, and then also football player Rob Gronowski and his girlfriend and a hairstylist giving tips. Our final event was on May 16th nationally on our Facebook page, and on our walk page, you can go to that and watch the watch party. So our goal was 54,000. They lowered it luckily to 25,000, and we came in at 36,000. And all that money is raised locally, and we will have some additional money coming to us from national sponsors. The biggest fear, like the other two had mentioned, was, you know, the funds being raised, but I think all of our funds are with no expenses. I think we did really well, and I think people ended up having a really good time because it gave them an opportunity to be recognized and say how they felt. We did highlight a lot of the people. So.
Wonderful, thanks, Sally. What was your big fear going into this?
My big fear was the fact that, well, first of all, when you have 400 people, most of those people do have arthritis that come to our events, and it's growing every year. And our biggest fear was that these people, this is their time to come together. Most of our participants do have arthritis, and it's a time for them to connect with each other. And that was one of the comments. However, people across the state said this is great because we can get to walk. So this is our opportunity to, you know, be part of an organization. So the fear was bringing the people together, and of course not raising the funds. But everybody was very positive so far, and you know, it worked, but not, of course, with the funds. But.
Right. Before we go on much further, just to kind of clarify for everybody, so Lindy, your event, I mean, it wasn't really so much a live event, it was really an auction. And how long did that auction last?
We put it online 10 days before the actual event was to have occurred. So it was live, and we have been putting our silent auction items for the last 2 or 3 years online ahead of the actual live event. But yeah, 10 days.
Okay. And then Denise, you had both an auction and a live streamed event. Is that correct?
That is correct. We went live the night of on our silent auction, and then we also did our programming. We did a Facebook live stream. We had an MC. We just did the exact same thing we were going to do the night of. We had some special presentations, and we really felt that that was important to continue to carry out because, again, we were early on that, you know, there was no really, the limitation was 50 people and under. So we did that. And not only did we upload our live auction then because we were using the platform of BidPal, which is a live auction, but we also were able to keep it live for a couple of days. So because of this whole virtual, you know, change and turnover, not usually your event, you know, when you're done with your silent auction or your live auction the night of, you're done. So we decided to keep both of those auctions open throughout the weekend, which really taught us a lot because as we were able to promote this as we were going virtual in those 48 hours to our entire database. And so what we learned from our silent auction, particularly, and our lives, but mostly our silent, is 80% of those people who paid top dollar for our silent auction were not even coming to the event.
Right. Wow. Okay. Interesting. And Sally, similar, you had, you didn't have an auction and you had a live event that was broadcast live, but you also had people getting together in real life, or at least doing something physical in real life.
Right. A lot of the, with the committee, we formed a daily schedule, and I would contact different team captains, and of course the honorees and our medical honoree and the sponsors to give them the opportunity to have a post of a video of them walking, talking about what they're offering. We also intermingled on our Facebook page and our email blast things that we were offering to help care for these people, because people with arthritis, you know, that's an autoimmune disease and they're very susceptible to anything anyway. So we offered, you know, help with that as well, different Care and Connect type information, helplines. So we tried to keep in mind what they were going through. So yes, we had live videos, I would say at least once or twice a week on our Facebook leading up to the event. And then afterwards, we had videos of people walking that day, including myself. So, I mean, but on the actual day of the event, we did nothing because the national office took over the page then. So a lot of it was, you know, videos and posts from different people involved in the event.
Okay. And then let's get kind of a baseline question out of the way. If you're able to return to a live event, would you still go back to a live event? Like, did anybody decide, oh, virtual was better and we're always going to do it this way from now on? Lindy?
Our hope is to go back to the live event. However, I think the lessons that we learned, we had a little bit more time to prepare for how we were going to approach the online virtual aspect of it than Denise had. But I think we would still go back to a live event. I think nothing can take the place of the energy in the room when you're, especially if your event includes things like a live oral auction and things like that. However, I think that we've learned a lot about our silent auction items and the type of items. If your event is going to be online or partially online, really looking at the scope and the how broad of interest. We've pretty much gathered in materials for our silent auction, and we have a younger attendee audience, typically younger parents and maybe in some cases younger grandparents of young children who are attendees of our event. And so the silent auction items were of interest to that demographic. If we are going to continue to do things online, I think we need to have a broader spectrum, because I heard from a number of individuals who don't fit into that category. There was nothing for me to bid on, Lindy. There was really nothing for me to go in and bid, which turned out to be okay because they just made a donation instead. But I think we would definitely go live by preference, but I think we need to be prepared for the opportunity to do more of it online and virtually.
Sure. And so you had a different audience. You have to be prepared to meet a different audience. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Denise and Sally, would you both agree that you will go back to live events if public health guidelines and safety allow?
I absolutely concur with what Lindy had mentioned. There's just something about, as our silent auction did well and our corporate sponsors, but there's something about that moment of a room of 500 or 600 people where it's an emotional ask, particularly for your live auction. And we've all been to them, and you know, you get in after the dinner and a few drinks, and the camaraderie and the competition between your live auction and your raise the paddle, and you're able to really share your story about your mission in live to people in your audience that can, you know, help you further that mission. And then, you know, it's just, and I, you know, I think we've all learned that, wow, we've been away for 3 or 4 months from each other in isolation, and what's the happy balance now? What are we all going to learn from this? I think we can take something from the virtual, but I think there's also something to be said about being together again. We're not meant, we're people of habits and, you know, creatures of that, but we need each other. We're not meant to be here alone. And I think there's going to be a better respect for going to events and making decisions and choices to really attend, and how important that really is. But I definitely think it's going to be a combination of both, but I strongly believe in the live event as well.
Okay. Thank you. I got some other urgent questions, so I'm going to kind of move on here. This might be kind of an unfair question for you all because you had to make the pivot to virtual kind of at the drop of a hat. But everybody in our audience, you know, they might have events scheduled in September, October, November, January of next year. Do you have any advice to offer them on when you should make the call? Like, at what point in your planning process do you say, we got to make a decision to go either virtual or live? Sally, do you have any input on that?
Well, I mean, for us, it was just, I mean, there was not a long decision. It was like the next day, everything was decided.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you kind of have to look ahead and kind of see what the numbers are and what others are doing, and try to promote your event if it is going virtual, that this is the way it is. And, you know, we had no complaints of it going virtual. So that's a tough question for me to answer because actually, I mean, people want to come together, and we will do it live again next year if we can, but I think that a couple months out, you should probably try to know. I think in the case of like Denise and Lindy, where their events were sooner, you know, they did really well. In our case, at least we had 2 months. So that's a tough question because you just, I mean, things are being canceled now for the fall. And, you know, I think you're safer to do it now than wait until the last minute and based on numbers. Is that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Lindy, what do you think about that? How soon do you need to start planning a virtual event? Is it the same lead time as a live event?
Well, I would say, considering the uncertainty of what is happening with the health crisis in the world, that everybody should be at least having a contingency plan that includes going virtual for any event, whether it's a year from now or it's 2 months from now. We made our decision a month out. We typically start selling the individual tickets about 2 months before the event. So we had just started to see individual ticket purchases come through. Going forward, we will make the decision on whether or not we feel like this event can be live or virtual. Ideally, if the conditions are there, 2 months out at the very minimum. But I really, part of our planning and going forward with our volunteer chairs, because the other thing that happened to us, and if you rely on a volunteer force to help be the labor and the energy behind pulling off the event, the same things that affected our businesses affected our volunteers, who are, many of them are women with young children at home. And so they were all of a sudden balancing things at home, so that our volunteer force was greatly impacted by that. So my advice to myself and to anybody on this panel is, assume that you might have to take your event virtual. I think the sooner you do, the less likely you'll have to just cancel it if you cannot take it live. So,
Right.
but I'd say 2 months. 2 months would be a
Right.
good portion.
So Denise, everybody's recommending more than 48 hours, I guess.
Yes, everyone is, and yay, right? But I concur with everyone. I mean, we've learned that in every event that we're doing moving forward is a plan B, just exactly like what Lindy said. But not only just a plan B, but, you know, we need to understand how we can continue to use our volunteers in a virtual way. They are so critical in our events to share those. I mean, we as an organization can share stuff, but it's really that social media outreach. So we're trying to keep our volunteers and our chairs and our honorary chairs engaged and say, here's how you can help us continue to spread the word, but also how can we take our event that is a line item in our budget every year, but make it a year-round thing and build up to that event, whether it's a virtual, live, whatever, so that people, again, I'm all about, we do these events because of our mission. And if we can remember to keep our mission at the forefront, that's why people get on board and help support us. So always have a plan B. That was our biggest aha moment. That's why when we decided to go virtual, is we already had the work done. You already had our invitations, we had our logo, we had our thing, and it's flipped the switch to put it on live and, on, through social media and the streams that we used or the platforms that we used. We already had the work done. You're already doing the work, so continue to do the work, whether you do it in person or on virtual. You have to do the same amount of work, so.
Yeah, okay.
And can I add to that really quick? We
Yeah,
developed
Sally.
a playbook for virtual events. So if this does happen in the future, then we're ready to go with that, because the benefits will be different, obviously. So
we will always incorporate virtual now.
right.
Interesting. Okay. Lindy, tell me a little bit about promoting the event. Are you reaching a different or broader audience? I mean, we kind of hinted at this before, and going forward, if you had to have a virtual event, would you make it ticketed and have a ticket that people pay for, or would you make it totally free in order to expand your audience? How do you think about that balance?
I don't know that I could give a definitive answer to that. I think both of those options would be something that we will be exploring as we already have our committee assembled for next year's benefit, and usually we take the summer off, but come September, the organization behind the event starts to happen, and it's been a well-oiled machine with our guild, our Rainbow Connectors Guild, and the Children's Museum Development Team. A lot has happened over the years to really define what those roles are. This spring, we got, a disruption that both disrupted our business and disrupted the lives and the available time that those volunteers had to finalize everything. So I think as we look at it, we will consider either of those options. I think the bigger piece of this needs to be the back end of it and what we are looking at as far as what we have to offer. If it's an in-person event, we can pretty much count on who we think are going to be here in the audience. Even the corporate tables tend to fill those tables with their young parents on their staffs, and that's okay. That's who we are. We're the Omaha Children's Museum, and so we've embraced that. But what we found when we went virtual, and especially when our honorary chairs reached out to their contacts, again, there wasn't as much in the meat of the event and the auction packages and that appealed to that different demographic. So I think it's given us a good reminder that we need to be more all-inclusive in who we approach. But I don't know, Shane, if I could give you a definitive answer of whether we would make it, free so that it appeals to all, or if we'd make it more of a targeted event. My gut tells me I would push for making it so it's more accessible to more people without having to have to purchase that ticket. But again, we'd have to see how the sponsorships and the underwriting and all of that can continue to be secured as a result of that.
Gotcha. Denise, what do you think about that? And then maybe you could add a little bit about your experience with sponsors and what they thought of your virtual direction.
every sponsor, we are so fortunate because every sponsor and every individual ticket person, not one person has asked for anything back. And quite frankly, we received a plethora of emails and phone calls saying, we support what you do, please use this towards. And again, at the time, nobody wanted to go to another steak dinner at a hotel or wherever your event is. So they've been really, we were fortunate about that. However, at the same time, I think, as I mentioned earlier about I think we'll always use a component of virtual. It's how do we then make it creative? How do we include within our virtual event our sponsors? And maybe, you do a build up to what your event is and you have a sponsor of the day and you share that with social media. I mean, I think we need to learn or begin to be in this world of technology more interactive. With Irish Fest, when we did the Facebook live stream, we had our MC do it. We, like I said, did the whole program, but we also created the build up to that in 48 hours. I'm sure people were like, delete Catholic Charities from my in-mail box because we're getting so in-mails like, show up, do this. We had a hashtag, and the fun thing is it became interactive. Like people were there. They were sharing their watch parties with us. They were, sharing, what they were doing. We were able to, bring back exactly what your, raise the paddle of $1,000 would do. And so I think that, to your question, I'm sure I'm all over the board, but we would incorporate all of these things together and continue to do what we are doing at the same time. But again, this is a work in progress for all of us. It's an ever-changing. There is no template anymore. The sky's the limit for all of us to be creative and actually collaborate and work together. And if it's working for one, let's help each other. We all know in this world of fundraising that donors want to see, how are you making this work? How are you collaborating? How are you working together? And so let's figure out how that all works and to interact with each other virtually.
Gotcha.
We need to really use technology to the highest component. It's much more powerful than we could ever think.
Gotcha. We're getting several questions about technology, so let's turn to that briefly. Sally, the technology platform for your virtual walk, this included Facebook and Facebook and the web and any other technologies?
Well, we did a lot of email blasts put on Facebook, but the Facebook watch parties came from our national Facebook page. They were not local, and there were 2 watch parties. Other than that, I would be just doing the posting, continually working with the committee for the different, information, keeping in mind the whole time is, like the other 2 ladies were talking about, that we're raising this money for our mission, and if it's virtual or live, so I did all the work locally on our Facebook page. It was just, posting. It wasn't any particular platform other than they had the 2 watch parties on the national page.
Gotcha. But we think email's pretty important because that's kind of that's the one thing that everybody has, right?
Right. Well, we gave emails.
Right.
Our email blasts were for how to fundraise, how to do it through, teach them how to take their teams and fundraising. We did raise quite a bit of money doing that versus what we normally would do. I would ask team captains to post a fundraising page. I think I sent you a slide of that, and then we'd have directions in our email blast. We'd call people and work with them too. So.
Okay. So then, Lindy, when it comes to your technology, what did you use and what were you using for your bid platform?
So we use Qtego, and that's Qtego, if anyone's not familiar with that. They are a fundraising event platform. Typically when the event is live, they have people in attendance that, but it takes the old version of a silent auction where you go around and put your bids on sheets and cross them out and add your new bid. It's all done on your phone. So it transfers. They have the online version of that. There are some challenges with Qtago, so we will probably be looking at additional platforms to get something with the assumption that we would be going on. One of the things is, it's just a simple thing, but you get a specific code that is emailed or texted to you once, and that's what you need to get back in and to keep bidding. And so we found a workaround. It was very labor intensive for our team, but to make it easier for, and especially people who aren't as tech savvy as others. I fall into that category, by the way. So anyway, Qtago is what we used, and they're pretty common. We started to see them at other events, and that's why we reached out to them.
Okay. And one of the questions we got in our queue, it has to do with the checkout procedures in the bid platform. They're asking, like, if it's too cumbersome, then people won't check out. Like, how was that part of the problem with Qtago as well? Like, was it easy for people to buy items?
Yeah, you put in your credit card information, so your checkout is just run at the end in a batch. So checkout is actually super, super slick. In fact, when the event is live, sometimes people don't even realize that they've purchased things. Wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is okay.
Yeah, we have that.
All right, Denise, could you tell us a little bit about the various technology that you use?
Right. We used BidPal. We've used them for the last couple of years. I know other organizations use those as well. I'm very pleased with them. It was very slick when you got online. If you got online to look at our silent auction items or to buy a ticket or to buy a sponsorship, you had to automatically sign up through BidPal, and they handled all of the transactions. They handled the back of the house. It was very easy, and like Lindy mentioned, you know, I've had donors at the end of the auction call and say, I didn't know I ordered that. Well, you were the last bid, so that's why you got charged. So you knew you bid on it. It was very sophisticated. It was integrated with our software package that we have right now. So we were able to, you know, dump that information into our software package that we use now for the development office to generate letters. It was very integrated. So I would highly suggest whether it's, you know, the one Lindy used or I used, I think they're all pretty sophisticated right now. That makes it very user-friendly and donor-friendly.
Okay.
So there's even an option, if you're not buying anything, that you can bid or donate through them as well. I would only caution that I would like to drive people to our website, because there's a percentage fee when you go through those platforms, online platforms. So we just use them typically for the month of our events, not all year long.
Okay. Okay.
Same here. Same here.
Okay.
Good point.
Good advice. Let's shift gears a little bit from some of the logistics and talk about the message, and talk about what motivates people to want to come to events, what motivates people to want to give generously when they're already engaged with an event, right? You know, as I think about events that I've been to, you know, I think about the elements of fun, the engagement, being there in person, the food, the beverages. These things all kind of help people have fun, stick around, capture their attention, really is the most important part. Lindy, what do you do in the virtual realm to really capture and hold people's attention so that they want to give?
Well, I'd say that was our challenge once we made the decision that we would not have the live event. I think, you know, Irish Fest and For the Kids Benefit are two events in the Omaha community that have a reputation for those very elements of it being fun, being very mission driven. So it's a fun audience. It's people who are invested in using the museum and all of that. And so what, you know, this coincided as we as an organization were making decisions about how we were going to reemerge out of the coronavirus shutdown. And so we actually normally we do, all of our messages are about, you know, all the wonderful things that we do for children and families and how we support them. Well, we aren't doing many of those things right now because we're shut down. And so instead, we shifted our messages into help us support. We have a team that we've retained that is committed to delivering on this mission in every way possible now. But the revenue that generally comes into the organization is not coming in. So help us support this team, getting that mission out into the community in all of the ways that we can right now. We kind of created an urgency about the in the now moment, not a future program or sustain a program. Oftentimes we focus on our access programs. Well, access to the Children's Museum means families are coming here. And in a time of closure, that access has shifted into how do we get to them. And so that was really making sure that we retained the team members who could do that and continue that. And that proved to be kind of that emotional tug that we needed at the time of the benefit.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Denise, could you tell me a little bit about what was some of the content of your live streamed event, and what was some of the messaging embedded in that?
So what was really the emotional tie to that is we created a new award this year, and it was the Father Mel Murwald, who was our executive director for many years and who had a great affiliation and affection to the community and to the services at Catholic Charities and to the clients. And we were fortunate enough that our chairs this year were the sister of Father Mel, the Hoke family, and we created around them a family. Our theme this year was generations, because their children were at the age that they're helping Lindy at the Children's Museum, but the Hokes might be part of the Arthritis Foundation. So it's this encompassing generational thing. And so we were fortunate to create this award, and we're going to do it every year, which is an emotional tie of what he has done for the community. But our theme at Catholic Charities is hope, strength, and resilience. And those are all the characteristics that Father Mel kind of exuded throughout the community. And he struggled with a very serious disease himself, and how he portrayed that. And so we gave away the first Father Mel Murwald Spirit of Courage Award. And we all can receive awards or whatever we receive, but our clients don't. So we chose to, instead of giving it to someone in the community, we chose to give it to one of our clients who has gone through our programs, who had the perseverance of strength, hope, and resilience. And it was this really strong emotional tie. And so we chose to continue to go live stream with this because it was really important. We had a video on Father Mel, and that's the great thing about technology. Use it, use it, use it. We were able to post the videos and continue to keep that on our website. And then also do the videos of Catholic Charities, but the Hoke family was able to present to the client that was awarded this monetary award and her children, and why Catholic Charities was so important. So it's really taking your mission and being really creative in how you can tie it all together so that the community could see that it's not about us, but why their dollars are so important, because this is a live person that you've made a difference and an impact to.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, people, this is funny for a grant writer to say, but people don't give because of the statistics that they read about your services. Especially when they're in an environment like an event where they're really focused on one organization, they're probably already engaged with that organization to some degree. It's going to be that emotional tie, that story. Yeah. And oftentimes probably a story about an individual person who they can at least somewhat identify with. That's going to be a key.
It's very tangible and it's very emotional. And we all have that. I think all of our nonprofits are such great organizations that, it's how do we tell the story and engage our donors in the community.
Yeah. And Denise, just so everybody knows, your live events, like how long were they in time? And did you think about like, how should they be really short? Should they be like a live event, or how did you think about the time?
It was just our program part. It was like from 7 to 8. We did, Nikki Boulay was our MC. She welcomed everyone. She introduced our chairs, Father Mike, our executive director. They were able to give their speech. And it was really kind of cool because you really got to see the people that got online and that were interacting just like this forum and go, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that person knew about us, because we, for 48 hours, I told you, your inbox will like get rid of Catholic Charities, but people, hey, I'm sitting at home, I can get on this. But I think it was just the right amount of time. Again, we were the first. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I'm just a firm believer and try and see what happens and learn from that. And how do you grow from that? There is no template anymore.
Gotcha. And Sally, I mean, when people come and participate in a physical activity like a walk or a run, does that kind of create more engagement? Is that create a greater?
It does. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, the downside to this was that these people do come together. This is their opportunity to meet each other, especially like new people that call the office and they say, oh, you know, I don't, and I encourage them to be part of these events. But one of the things with the virtual event is like our honorees were able to tell their stories without people sitting off and eating, or our karaoke band playing music, that you had total focus on their story on Facebook, and their teams more money was brought in because of those stories. I mean, they were, throbbing type of stories about what they went through. Like our youth honoree was 3 years old, and her parents had her get on our Facebook page and try to talk about what she had. And then our adult honoree, who's been involved with the foundation for years and with the Med Center and everything else, had a long story. So that upped their fundraising, but it also gave them their time to shine, their time to tell their story, so we better understand what these people live with. And so that was the plus side of that, because at an event, they're there and they get up and speak, but is everybody really listening? So there's pros and cons to that part of the mission part, because I kept saying, keep in mind, we're here to help find a cure. It doesn't matter how we do it. So, and that seemed to resonate across the board. And our sponsors, no one gave me any, I want my money back or anything like that. They were very supportive, and they were offered those same opportunities too.
All right, excellent.
And I would say, to add to the whole virtual thing, you don't know who you're touching. Right. Your audience is so much broader than those 500 or 600 people. So you don't know who you've touched or who you've triggered, or who in your family is like, oh my God, my mom had arthritis, or oh my gosh, my child learned to thrive at the children. You never know. So just continue to do what we're doing and really take advantage of the technology arena.
Sure.
And I think I've heard, and I'm not trying to get off, but I think we've all learned through this pandemic that, something that we've been planning for 15 years, we've done in 15 days. We've been forced to, everybody have a laptop, work from home, that was our plan for 2 years ago. So we've all been forced to try everything and move ahead.
Right, right. And just to go back and reiterate, you all ended up with content that you are continuing to use in your fundraising, right? Like that, if you created a special moment at an event, that is going to last you some period of time.
Right. Yeah, we in particular, our event, because it happens in early May, always coincides closely with the Omaha Gives. And then typically we would launch a semi-annual appeal somewhere in, following Omaha Gives, the beginning of summer. Because of the disruption that coronavirus created for all of us, we decided to start messaging on outside of the event, start messaging. And we used that same message of help us support this team. We came up with a very specific ask of $50 supports 2 hours of time of our staff directly impacting children during our time of closure. And we've found that, and we've stayed on that message. We will continue to stay on that message until the time we are ready to open to the public. And then we'll start highlighting the stories of the families, and particularly the most vulnerable families that we were serving, who we had the gap, and who we quite frankly have been worried about. And so it didn't seem appropriate to push that story out, even though it would tug at your heartstrings. The reality of it is that that's not what we are doing right now. So we've just kind of really made our messages very much tight and to that urgency of in the right now in this moment.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, that's a key point. Getting emotional, reaching people in their hearts. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I think is really important within the events context is what I'd call social persuasion or social pressure, right? I might give because I'm being seen giving. I might be more motivated to give because other people are giving and I'm surrounded by givers. I might be attending the event because my wife made me, or because my coworkers invited me to come along and fill a table, right? In the virtual realm, Lindy, let's start with you. What was going on with social persuasion? Were people able to see each other bid, or were you a little bit limited in that area?
They weren't able to see each other bid, like who was bidding against them. They were able to see, you know, when they would get outbid, you'd get a notification and things like that. So there was a blindness to that social persuasion. You didn't really know who that was.
Right.
The only place where that really occurred was in what we called our Raise the Paddle, our general donation. So when you logged back on, it automatically brought up the screen and it was a scrolling list of names of who was donating to that. So that was really the only place in the absence of a live event that you got that feeling. I think that's the challenge as we go forward, and we assume there's going to be a virtual aspect of it. The challenge is to go back to these technology companies, find out their advice and what platforms they have to help that. And perhaps maybe if we'd had a live feed type event, you could have seen some more of that action. But so I don't know, Denise, if you saw that with.
I 100% agree, because we did this in 48 hours. Lessons learned is that emotional thing. And we've actually gone back to your point, to BidPal, and said, okay, if we're going to continue to do this, there has to be a mechanism. And they're learning too. So at the same time, we need to be proactive in going back to them and saying, if this is going to be the way of the future, here's some things we need that we lost by not having that, you know, one-on-one. And it's also what we did to create that emotional tie is, you know, we had host people making sure that, you know, they made sure their table of 10, we knew the captains of each table to say, make sure they're watching. But we did lose, and we, you know, again, doing this in 48 hours is that live auction and Raise the Paddle. But what we did do with Raise the Paddle, though, is we left it up for 2 weeks. And we had very tangible, I mean, we, you know, if we did it the night of, we would have been done that night, say that's it. We were now able to reach a broader audience, keep it open longer, but we had tangible things. We needed a Sprinter van for home delivery. And so, again, it was adapting to what is even happening in our community at the same time. The whole world was shutting down. People weren't getting food. So we were fortunate in that aspect of it. But moving forward, you know, it's the tangible thing, if it's going to continue to be virtual, that someone can see they're making a difference. But I do believe, like Lindy said, that competitiveness, I'm a strong believer. I've been to enough of them. That's why people give. And sometimes people wake up on that emotional moment of giving is they wake up on Sunday and it was like, what did I do? On Sunday, they're saying, shoot, I shouldn't have done that, but we already got their money. So you lose that, you know, 30 minutes of emotional, I've had a few cocktails, you know, I believe in your mission. So that you know, it's ever ongoing learning.
Denise, you just reminded me that I might still have an unused night in some downtown hotel that I have.
Exactly. See, you bought an item that you don't even know. I've got plenty of them.
Denise, I know you didn't have time for this event, but going forward, have you given any thought to whether you would like have people organize small gatherings in their homes and you would like have them go pick up food? Would you send swag home? Would you try to facilitate home drinking to encourage more giving?
Yes, and all of the above. We're doing an event in July. I'm not going to plug it right now, but we're doing an event in July, which is it's called Essential Fest. But to those points, you know, we're going to have koozies. Stop by this local brewery and you've got koozies for this event. But yes, moving forward, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be a year-long buildup, and I think we could all learn that our events, yeah, everybody knows when they are, but if you can do small watch parties or, you know, small home parties as some of the restrictions loosen up, to have these events, to tell your story more. It's a great opportunity for us to, again, the biggest thing I've learned from this is Irish Fest is in March, but gosh, it should be all year long because it's our largest event. I feel very fortunate that our chairs and the family that did it this year, they were so agile with us to say, sorry, we got to flip the switch. This is what we're going to do, but they're doing it next year because they really want that live event. So, but to your question, and the answer is we're doing stuff, we're going to do stuff throughout the year to build up to that. So that Irish Fest is always going to be in the forefront. It's not going to just be in March.
Gotcha. Sally, the walk is an event that just seems really well integrated with the mission of the Arthritis Foundation. I mean, these are the same people you serve, the same people you're giving information to. They're engaged in a healthy activity. Talk to me a little bit about how they might have encouraged each other to participate and give.
Well, first of all, the fundraising end of our event is kind of a race to see who's going to raise them. I mean, normally the teams try to outdo the other, and it's all in fun. It's not, and they're awarded for it. But this year they've all donated their whatever they've won back to the foundation. But what we did, we made a lot of calls, you know, caring calls to these people to tell them what was going on, and we're here for you. So that is the message that we really wanted to get across first, is that our care and connect, and it was all over our website. Our foundation is website driven, and again, that's tough when you don't have the computer and everything. So you talk to them on the phone, but we have an online community of support. We have inside assessments. Doctors have our information to pass on. A lot of physicians are starting to partner with us again. So that's all year long, and our walk is all year long, really. I mean, we have two other events. We have a gala and a run, but the walk is our big event because, like you said, it brings people together. But in this case, I noticed on Facebook with a lot of the posts that people were really starting to like our page, other people with arthritis, because I would know who those people are because they come to the walk. And that was a great feeling to see that they've become part of this virtual community. So, that's the plus on it. And again, the negative was that they weren't physically together to support each other. But we're going to start offering tips on how to do things with people with arthritis, gardening, cooking, diet and all that. So.
Great, thank you.
Because we're not doing our gala. It's been postponed to next year, so.
Okay.
Yeah, not good, but yeah.
Gotcha. Let's talk about after the event a little bit. Lindy, people can still see your auction website, and after the event they could still access it. How else did you follow up with attendees afterward?
So we, like Denise and Irish Fest, we kept our Raise the Paddle portion of the auction live for about a week past the event. Our goal was to raise $50,000. We got just shy of that. We had a $20,000 pledge that every pledge of $100 or more was matched. So we were really trying to drive that towards the end. The other thing too is, in addition to writing the letters and signing it, if you'll allow me, I'll share. We did an email thank you, and we highlighted the staff that we were asking individuals to asking them to support. And so this is just real quick, but we just did this. So we put faces to the people that we were asking them to support as part of our team.
Cool.
Nice.
individual people.
Let me stop this here so we get rid of the music. Sorry. Anyway, so that's how we kind of tied it back to that emotional. These are the faces of the people that we were asking our donors and our participants to support in delivering to our mission.
Yeah. Denise, tell me a little bit about your follow-up. Did you do anything different with the follow-up from this event?
We did, and almost to what Lindy did is we did an entire staff Zoom call where all of our faces were on there, and it was a video, and it was an embedded hyperlink, and it was all of Catholic Charities staff saying thank you to all of our donors, to all of ours. So we had this big, and it's on our Facebook now, and it was Father Mike, our executive director, saying thank you to all of our donors and people that supported us. And then it was each one of our staffs in our little box saying thank you.
Wow, that sounds impressive. Cool. Sally, could you tell us a little bit about follow-up?
Well, I'm the only staff person in this office, so I did a thank you. I was out on the Zorinsky Trail and I did a thank you out there, and I encouraged people to continue to stay with the theme of raising $54, telling 54 people, and moving 54 steps, and to share their stories of their experience with the virtual walk, which they did. I got on my post were videos, on the comments section, and then we highlighted each sponsor again and talked about, how grateful we were to them, and then we highlighted the top teams. So we kept it moving for a couple of weeks after the event. Every day something was posted, showing our gratitude and highlighting our honorees again, and people walking the day of. So, and we're still, if they send them to me, they go up. So.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn to the Q&A box here a little bit, and we'll cover some of these questions that have been rolling in. And we'll start with Lindy again. How did you recognize your sponsors during and throughout the event and your communications? And were there any tough conversations with sponsors, being able to provide a similar value as to what they would normally gain from an in-person event?
So the answer to the first question is, as you logged on to our website that had the auction, there was just a scrolling list of the sponsors, the table sponsors and the underwriters of the event. So if you were watching an item, if you were just checking in on an item, you were constantly seeing those names scroll through. If you specifically went to the Raise the Paddle page, then you would see who was live and who was donating in the live auction part of it. And then honestly, I think what led to our success is that in January, our letters for the underwriting and the table support go out each year. And most of those come in during the months of January, February, and early March. We did have a few that came in after we made the announcement that we were closing, but we notified every business that had purchased a table to let them know. We gave them the option of leaving that as general support, and 100% just shifted their table sponsorships to general support. And honestly, I think in some ways, because some of the larger corporations who support many of the events that go on in Omaha were probably relieved that they didn't have to send the email out, gather the names, email addresses, and all.
We were still trying to get the names.
Yeah, yeah. So, we were missing that aspect of it, the specific names, but we have enough of a record of years past that we had plenty of people to notify to do that. So we did only have one company who is a company that almost always supports it that decided not to do a table sponsorship for our event this year. That is actually a company that is out there in offering support in many other ways. So they had shifted very quickly. But for the most part, all of our companies that we rely on had already responded or sent in their pledge for the table, and we've 100% collected on those. So.
Okay, wow. Just going through our other questions here a little bit. Denise, could you tell me whether or not you received any feedback from attendees and how did they receive the event?
We received actually a lot of feedback from it. Again, we were the first, so this was new for them. But I'll never forget the first one I got was the night of, from a very large donor and sponsor that said, you know, please keep this donation 100%. I will stand behind you. Please let me know if there's even any donors that or corporations that don't stand behind it. I'm happy to call them. This is an important event that supports the mission. And I know I keep beating a dead horse, but we have, you know, these events that we have are a tool or a vehicle for fundraising. It's about all year long. We have Irish Fest, we have the Arthritis or Lindy's, you know, the Children's Museum because of the work we do. And that's why people give to us and believe. They already purchased a table. They didn't buy the table because they wanted to come to another steak dinner and we were still collecting the names 48 hours before. They did it because they believe in your organization. So I personally want to be clear that people give because of your organization and be proud of that and don't be afraid to ask for that because it's not about coming to Irish Fest. That's the fun part. That's the caveat, but it's really about what we all do in our community.
Gotcha. Okay. You know, we're coming up on the end of our time here, about 7 minutes left or so. Let's shift to lessons learned. Sally, what did you learn that you're going to implement next time?
Well, to give that more individual attention to individuals. I think that as far as like our sponsors normally have a table, they get an opportunity to speak. They have signs all over the place. I think that, you know, with the way that we did it, they still had the Facebook. They also had the website and our T-shirts and everything else. But I think, you know, we need to revisit other ways we can get the message out besides social media and email. So that's something that, you know, I've been thinking a lot about because this could be happening with our Jingle Bell Run. And of course, our gala has been postponed to next year. So we have to think about how are we going to meet the needs because we had other sponsors that were interested. So I moved them with the opportunity to our Jingle Bell Run. So, you know, I want to be able to give them, if we're virtual, you know, more opportunities as well as participants.
Well, and a related question is, let's say you are able to hold a live walk or other events in the future. Are you learning lessons from this that you will still apply to those live events?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we did extra actually that we would normally do. So I take what I did now and add it to what you normally do at the live event. In other words, calling these people out more often and giving them opportunities, because I think it really drove a lot of traffic with the individual acknowledgements that lasted a whole day, not just once, but twice or 3 times. So that's what I would add to what we normally do in our live events.
Okay, great. Lindy, lessons learned?
Well, I think lessons still to be learned are what Denise has continued to remind us is to not lose focus on how much the technology can support event, even if the event goes back to a first person event. I think we always knew that, which Denise keeps reminding us, that the mission and the organization is why people are gathering and having fun and letting loose and all of that. And so continuing to make that. And I think the biggest lesson learned just in this time of a pandemic health crisis is be really, really, really specific around what you need to support your organization in the now. That advice that I've been given and been working on, I think has really, because we have continued to raise money and see gifts in the, you know, 6 figures coming in to support the museum, even during a time when we are closed and our earned revenues are shut off from us. So I think never underestimate the power of your mission, and I would also say your brand. And our event is branded as a fun, kid-focused but adult appropriate event in the community.
Yeah. Okay. Denise, any lessons learned? Would you just go hire a consulting firm to take care of all of this next time, or?
Yeah, are you up for the job? I
Shane?
would say the biggest lesson learned, as everyone has echoed, we're all learning, is don't take for granted your sponsors, your donors, just for your event. How do we keep them engaged all year long? How do you keep your message in front of them? Because as we all are seeing in the SNAP, it can be gone and they can pull funds and they're redirecting them funds. Keep them engaged all year long. That your story should be, again, like Lindy said, the event is a celebration of a year of activities, but how do you keep them engaged all year?
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all three. I mean, if there's any realization that I have had in the process of talking to you and reading about your events, it's if there's one kind of certain way forward, it's probably the idea of a hybrid event. That maybe the best of both worlds is something where you have people showing up in person, provided it's safe. They're emotionally engaged and they're engaged with each other in that environment, but you're doing plenty of things digitally as well to expand to an audience that would not normally come to something that was physically located in like just Omaha or something like that. I mean, Sally, your service territory is much more than Omaha, right?
Right, it's the whole state and part of Iowa.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe there's a best of both worlds approach where digital elements can reach more people, the live elements reach some people in a more profound way, and you benefit from both ends of that. And it sounds like all your recommendations are that for the foreseeable future, you should at least have a plan B that's all digital, right?
Right.
And never be afraid to try. You have nothing to lose.
That sounds like the best advice to close on. Thank you all. Again, everybody, put down July 1st on your calendar. Check the NAM website for registering for the Next in the Insights series, which is going to cover some thorny issues related to ethics and legal considerations in the workplace that have been posed by COVID-19. So, again, thank you, and thank you, Abby, for organizing.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you to
you,
our
everyone.
panelists.
Thank you.
Again, Shane covered all of my stuff, so it makes my job easy. So keep checking the NAM calendar. We have lots of trainings, panels coming up to help everyone get through these times. So thank you, Denise, Lindy, and Sally. We greatly appreciate your guys' insights today.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.